William Carter stood tall as the transport doors opened. The air inside Nexus Station tasted artificial, filtered through too many recyclers. He straightened his dark blue uniform, the Earth insignia catching the light as he took his first step into the massive chamber. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to impress. Crystal spires reached toward a simulated sky. Representatives from 12 advanced civilizations sat at curved desks arranged in ascending tiers, looking down at the central speaking platform. Some had scales, others tentacles or too many eyes. All watched the human with expressions ranging from curiosity to thinly veiled contempt. Carter had studied each species extensively during the long journey here. The Illuvians with their shimmering blue skin, the massive Arcturians who needed special gravity supports, the insect-like Vex collective who communicated through clicks and whistles. In 15 years since first contact, humans had barely scratched the surface of understanding these ancient civilizations. Ambassador William Carter of Earth announced the chamber's AI in multiple languages. Approach and be recognized. Carter walked forward, his footsteps echoing. Behind him stood his small team. 2 security officers and his assistant, Greg Peters, who carried a secure data tablet. Carter could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. "The Council recognizes Earth's new ambassador," said Chairperson Zixval, an Illuvian whose translucent fingers tapped impatiently on the desk. "We welcome you and hope for productive discourse regarding trade routes and your petition for technology sharing." Carter reached the speaking platform. A light scanned him, and a small force field hummed to life. Not enough to trap him, just enough to mark boundaries. Standard procedure, they claimed. "Thank you, Chairperson," Carter said, his voice steady. "I bring urgent matters before this council." Yes, Zixval waved a hand dismissively. "Your requests for advanced propulsion systems have been noted. The Technology Oversight Committee will review them in due course." Carter took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "I am not here about technology sharing," he said clearly. "I come with a warning and a declaration." He paused, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. "It's time for war." The chamber erupted. Translation devices struggled with the sudden outbursts in 24 languages. Security drones descended from hidden compartments. The force field around Carter strengthened. "Order." Zixval's voice boomed through override speakers. "What is the meaning of this outburst, Ambassador Carter?" Carter remained calm. "I have evidence that demands the attention of this council. Earth has uncovered a threat to all our civilizations, one that has already begun its invasion." "Preposterous," shouted a representative of the Vex collective, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Humans have been spacefaring for barely a century. What could you possibly know that our civilizations have missed?" Carter nodded to Greg, who stepped forward with the data tablet. "Perhaps it is because we are new that we see what older eyes have grown blind to," Carter replied. "I request permission to present our evidence regarding the Coraxian hegemony and their infiltration operations." The name sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. Few had heard of the Coraxians, exactly as they preferred it. Zixval's eyes narrowed. "This is highly irregular. The Council does not recognize this hegemony as a political entity." "That's exactly the problem," Carter said. "They exist beyond your maps, beyond your awareness, and they have agents in this very chamber." Security officers moved closer to Carter. Members of 12 species shouted for his removal, but one voice cut through the chaos. "Let him speak." The deep rumble came from Krenfall, the massive Arcturian representative. "If Earth has evidence, the Council will evaluate it. That is our purpose." Carter met the Arcturian's 4 eyes with gratitude. "Very well," Zixval said coldly. "You have 1 hour to present your evidence. Then this council will decide if Earth's representative should be censured for disruptive behavior." Carter nodded. 1 hour is all I need to show you what's coming." The council chamber's lights dimmed as Carter signaled Greg to activate the presentation. The first image appeared. a star map highlighting worlds where Coraxian agents had already taken control. There were far too many red dots. The holographic display filled the center of the council chamber. Stars and planets rotated slowly as Carter moved his hands through the projection. 3 months ago, Susan Miller, a junior analyst at Earth Intelligence, noticed something unusual, Carter said. Communication patterns between certain diplomatic outposts didn't match established protocols. Carter highlighted several worlds where the patterns appeared. Many council members leaned forward, their attention caught despite their initial hostility. Miller took her findings to her supervisor, Frank Douglas. Carter continued. What they discovered was disturbing. The hologram shifted to show intercepted messages. Lines of code and fragmented communications flowed across the display. Carter let the data speak for itself before explaining. These are communications from Coraxian agents embedded within your governments, he said flatly. They've been reporting to their handlers for years, possibly decades. Ambassador Zix Val's blue skin darkened with emotion. This proves nothing. Data can be fabricated, which is why we didn't come to you with just data, Carter replied. He nodded to Greg, who pressed another button on the tablet. The hologram changed to show a recording. A humanoid figure with pale green skin sat in what appeared to be an interrogation room. Carter let the recording play. My name is Vex Moore, the figure said in a halting voice. I serve the Grand Overseer of the Coraxian hegemony. I was placed on Earth 5 years ago to assess human military capabilities and influence your leadership toward policies favorable to our eventual annexation. The council chamber grew very quiet. This agent was captured attempting to access military files, Carter explained. Under questioning, he revealed the full extent of the Coraxian network. They have agents on at least 7 council worlds. An Arcturian diplomat pounded a massive fist on his desk. If this is true, why have we detected nothing? Because they're patient, Carter said, and because they specifically target areas you've grown complacent about. Your security systems look for known threats. Coraxians operate differently. Carter brought up more data. Subtle shifts in policy decisions, unexplained disappearances of minor officials, strange equipment failures at key moments. Humans have a history of paranoia, Carter said with a small smile. Our fiction is filled with stories of hidden invaders. It's made us uniquely qualified to spot patterns others might dismiss. A representative of the Vex Collective chittered rapidly. Even if these infiltrators exist, war is an extreme response. Diplomatic channels were tried. Carter interrupted. Quietly, we sent messages to what we believed was Coraxian space. The response was the complete destruction of our research outpost on Proxima Centauri II. 43 scientists and their families. No survivors. Carter displayed images of the devastation. Several council members turned away from the graphic footage. The Coraxians don't want negotiation, Carter continued. They want infiltration, followed by conquest. They'd been playing a long game, moving pieces into position, while the council focused on trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Zix Val stood abruptly. This is still not sufficient evidence to justify war. You're asking the council to commit to a conflict based on conspiracy theories and one supposed captured agent. Carter's expression hardened, which is why we've already begun acting on our own. Captain Lori Bennett and the U.S. Defiant intercepted a Coraxian vessel yesterday. We've transmitted its navigation logs to all of you. They contain coordinates of every infiltration site and safe house in council space. The room erupted again. Some demanded to see the data immediately. Others called for Carter's arrest for unauthorized military action in council space. Through the chaos, Carter noticed Ambassador Krenthal studying the data with all 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The massive Arcturian looked up and met Carter's gaze with a slight nod. The council will recess for 2 hours, Zix Val announced. Ambassador Carter will be detained while we verify these claims. As security approached, Carter offered no resistance. He had expected this. The evidence would speak for itself. And back on Earth, Susan Miller was already uncovering the next piece of the puzzle. Carter sat in a holding room, his hands resting calmly on the table. The walls shimmered with security fields. 2 guards stood by the door, their weapons not quite pointed at him. 6 hours had passed since the council recess began. It seemed verification was taking longer than expected. The door slid open. Ambassador Krenthal ducked to fit his massive Arcturian frame through the entrance. The guards tensed, but Krenthal waved them away. "Leave us," he rumbled. When they hesitated, he added, "Council authority." Once they were alone, Krenthal settled into a reinforced chair across from Carter. The table creaked under his 4 massive arms as he leaned forward. "Your evidence is compelling," Krenthal said without preamble. "I have found 3 infiltrators in my own delegation." Carter nodded. "How did the council vote?" "They haven't." Deliberations continue. Krenthal's upper eyes blinked in what Carter recognized as frustration. Many fear war more than infiltration. The council hasn't faced true conflict in over 1,000 years. "The corrections are counting on that fear," Carter said. A small device on Krenthal's wrist vibrated. He checked it, all 4 eyes widening. "There's a transmission you should see." He placed the device on the table. A hologram appeared, showing a woman in an Earth Fleet uniform. "Ambassador Carter, this is Captain Lori Bennett of the U.S. Defiant," she said, her face grim. "Proxima Colony has been attacked again. This was no research outpost. Over 20,000 civilians. We arrived too late to prevent most of the damage, but we engaged 3 Coraxian vessels and captured one." Bennett's image was replaced by footage of a devastated colony. Buildings burned. Bodies lay in streets. The camera panned to show a strange device planted in the colony center. "They weren't just attacking," Bennett continued when her face reappeared. "They were searching for something. We rescued Dr. Alan Rodriguez, who was leading an archaeological team. He says the corrections were looking for artifacts from the colony's moon." Krenthal made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. "Artifacts? Of what kind?" "Unknown," Bennett replied. "Rodriguez is analyzing what he managed to save, but he's certain the corrections didn't find what they wanted." The transmission ended. Carter and Krenthal sat in silence for a moment. "This changes matters," Krenthal finally said. "I must bring this to the council immediately." Meanwhile, on Earth, Susan Miller stared at her screens with bloodshot eyes. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Data streamed past as her algorithms searched for patterns in the captured Coraxian codes. "You should rest," Frank Douglas said, placing a cup of coffee beside her. Miller shook her head. "I found something. Look at these communication records." Douglas leaned closer. "These go back centuries," Miller finished. "Different names, different methods, but the same patterns. The corrections have been infiltrating galactic civilizations for at least 300 years. Douglas straightened, his face pale. "Send this to Carter immediately." Back on Nexus Station, the council had reconvened. Carter stood once again on the speaking platform, now with Krenthal beside him in support. "The attack on Proxima Colony is an act of war," Carter stated. "Earth formally declares hostilities against the Coraxian hegemony, with or without council support." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some representatives appeared shocked, others angry, a few thoughtful. "This is madness," Zixfall said. "Humans cannot hope to stand against an enemy of unknown strength. The council needs more time to investigate." "With respect, we don't have time," Carter interrupted. "Every day we delay gives the corrections more opportunity to strengthen their position. The Arcturus Collective stands with Earth," Krenthal announced unexpectedly. "We have confirmed Coraxian infiltration of our systems. This threat cannot be addressed through committees and investigations." The chamber erupted again. In the chaos, Carter received a message from Miller on his secure tablet. His eyes widened as he read her discovery. "The corrections have been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. and they were searching for something that could change the balance of power forever. The U.S. Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the edge of the Proxima system. The ship's hull still showed scorch marks from the previous battle. On the bridge, Captain Lori Bennett studied the tactical display, her face illuminated by its blue glow. "Scan for any remaining Coraxian vessels," she ordered. Her first officer, Paul Harris, shook his head after checking the sensors. "Nothing in range, Captain. They've withdrawn." Bennett nodded grimly. "Take us to the colony." As the ship approached Proxima Colony, the true scale of destruction became clear. Once beautiful dome structures lay shattered. Environmental systems vented atmosphere into space. Emergency shelters glowed faintly in the colony's central district, the only signs of survivors. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Alan Rodriguez sat on an examination table. His right arm was bandaged, and a medic treated burns on his face. Despite his injuries, he tapped frantically on a data pad with his good hand. "Dr. Rodriguez," Bennett said as she entered, "we need to know what the Coraxians we're looking for." Rodriguez looked up, his eyes feverish with excitement despite the tragedy. "Captain, they attacked the colony as a diversion. Their main force targeted my excavation site on the moon." He turned his data pad to show her images of strange metallic objects covered in symbols. "These artifacts don't match any known civilization. The technology is incredible. We've barely scratched the surface of understanding them." "What do they do?" Bennett asked. "I believe they're components of a weapon," Rodriguez said. "A very, very old weapon, created by the precursors." Bennett's eyes widened. Every spacefaring race knew of the precursors, an ancient civilization that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving only ruins and mysteries. "The Coraxians found two components," Rodriguez continued, "but they missed the most important one." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crystalline device. It pulsed with inner light. "This is the control mechanism. Without it, the other pieces are useless." On Nexus Station, the Council remained deadlocked. Ambassador Carter and Krenthal had gained support from 3 more species, but the majority still hesitated to commit to war. The humans rushed to conflict without considering alternatives, Zixval argued. "We must attempt diplomatic contact with these Coraxians." Carter received a coded message from Earth. His face hardened as he read it. "While we debate," he told the Council, "the Coraxians have attacked 2 more outposts, one belonging to the Vex Collective." The insectoid representatives clicked in alarm, conferring among themselves. "We have not received reports of such an attack," one of them said. "Because your communications have been compromised," Carter replied. "The outpost at Vega IX has been silent for 6 hours. Earth vessels in nearby space detected energy signatures matching the Proxima Colony attack." The Vex representatives grew agitated. One of them approached Carter after the session. "If this is true," the Vex diplomat said, mandibles twitching, "the collective will reconsider its position." Meanwhile, Susan Miller had made another breakthrough. She rushed into Frank Douglas's office without knocking. "I've identified their communication patterns," she said breathlessly. "Every infiltrator receives instructions through what look like standard data bursts. If we can disrupt those communications, we can isolate their agents." Douglas studied her findings. "This could work. We need to get this to Bennett immediately." Back on the Defiant, Bennett received the transmission from Earth. Her communications officer worked to implement Miller's discovery while Rodriguez continued studying the artifact. "Captain," her tactical officer called out suddenly. 3 vessels just appeared at the edge of the system. Coraxian signatures. Bennett straightened in her command chair. "Battle stations. Prepare to engage." "Wait," Rodriguez said, rushing onto the bridge. "The artifact is reacting to their presence. It's connecting to something on their ships." The crystalline device in his hand pulsed more rapidly, projecting lines of energy that formed a star map in the air above it. One location glowed brighter than the others. "That's where they're taking the other components," Rodriguez said. "Some kind of fortress in the Omega Nebula." Bennett's face set in determination. Send this information to Earth and the Arcturus fleet. We know their destination now. The Defiant's engines flared as it moved to intercept the approaching Coraxian vessels. The first true battle of the war was about to begin. Earth's orbital defense platforms hummed with energy as the small fleet prepared to depart. 7 ships, the best Earth could spare. Not much against an enemy of unknown strength, but they would have to be enough. Ambassador Carter stood at the viewport of Earth Command, watching the ships. Admiral Jane Foster approached, offering him a data tablet. "Our latest intelligence," she said. "The Arcturus Collective has committed 12 vessels to the effort. The Vex have confirmed attacks on their outposts and are mobilizing." Carter nodded. "And the Council?" "Still deliberating," Foster said with obvious disgust. "They've spent so long avoiding conflict they've forgotten how to recognize when it's necessary." Carter's secure communicator chimed. It was Greg Peters from Nexus Station. "Ambassador, something strange is happening," Peters said, his voice low. Ambassador Zix Val called an emergency closed session. "Only senior council members allowed. Try to find out what's happening," Carter instructed. "I'm returning to Nexus Station immediately." Aboard the U.S. Defiant, Captain Bennett watched the Coraxian ships on her tactical display. They maintained their distance, not attacking but not retreating. "They're scanning us," her sensor officer reported. "They know we have the artifact," Dr. Rodriguez said. He hadn't left the bridge, the crystal device still clutched in his hand. "They're trying to figure out how to get it without damaging it." Bennett considered their options. "Can we use Miller's communications disruption program?" Her communications officer nodded. "Ready to deploy, Captain." "Do it," Bennett ordered. A signal burst from the Defiant, targeting the specific frequencies Miller had identified. On the Coraxian vessels, chaos erupted as infiltrators' implants suddenly went silent. "They're moving," the tactical officer announced. 2 ships breaking formation, heading for the colony. "They're confused," Bennett said with satisfaction. "Target engines on the lead vessel. Fire when ready." The Defiant's weapons lanced out, striking the first Coraxian ship precisely where Bennett had ordered. The enemy vessel listed to one side, its propulsion systems damaged. "The other ships are powering weapons," the tactical officer warned. Bennett nodded. "Evasive pattern Delta. Continue targeting engines. We need one of these ships intact for study." Back on Earth, Susan Miller hadn't slept in days. She worked feverishly, trying to decode more of the Coraxian communications they'd intercepted. "Look at this," she told Frank Douglas, pointing to a series of transmissions. "These go to locations throughout Council space. But this one," she highlighted a particularly strong signal. "This goes directly to Nexus Station." Douglas's eyes widened. "Someone on the Council." "Not just someone," Miller said. "Based on the transmission patterns, someone with high-level access." On Nexus Station, Ambassador Krenfel moved cautiously through the less-traveled corridors. Something about the emergency session felt wrong. Zix Val had been acting strangely ever since Carter presented his evidence. Krenfel paused outside a service entrance to the Council chamber. His large frame made stealth difficult, but decades of diplomatic training had taught him patience. He waited until the guard looked away, then slipped inside. "The humans must be stopped," Zix Val was saying to the assembled senior council members. "Their warmongering threatens everything we've built." "The evidence of Coraxian infiltration is compelling," argued a representative of the Solarian Union. "Isolated incidents," Zix Val dismissed. "Not worth plunging the galaxy into war." Krenfel watched from the shadows as Zix Val's hand moved subtly to a device on his wrist. A moment later, the Solarian representative's eyes glazed over. "Perhaps you are right," the Solarian said tonelessly. "We should proceed with caution." Krenfel had seen enough. He retreated silently, then sent an urgent message to Carter. The infiltration went higher than anyone had suspected. Zix Val himself was controlling council members. In deep space, the battle between the Defiant and the Coraxian vessels intensified. Bennett's ship twisted and turned, evading most of the enemy fire while landing precision strikes of their own. "Captain," Rodriguez called out suddenly, "the artifact is reacting again." The crystal in his hand was pulsing rapidly, projecting images faster than anyone could follow. "It's not just a control device," Rodriguez realized. "It's a key, and it's showing us how to stop the weapon." Ambassador Carter's shuttle docked at Nexus Station amid heightened security. Guards with nervous eyes checked his credentials twice before allowing him through. News of the battles at Proxima and Vega Ariex had spread, creating an atmosphere of tension throughout the station. Krenthal waited for him in a secure room, all four of his eyes constantly scanning for surveillance. "I have proof," the Arcturian rumbled, keeping his voice low. "Zixval is not just an infiltrator. He appears to be their commander in council space." Carter reviewed the evidence Krenthal had gathered. "How many council members do you think he controls?" "At least 5, Krenthal said. "Possibly more. They show subtle signs, delayed reactions, identical phrasing, simultaneous movements." "We need to expose him during a full council session," Carter said. "With everyone watching, even those who doubt us will have to accept the truth." Krenthal's upper eyes blinked in agreement. "I've called for an emergency vote on the Coraxian threat. It begins in 1 hour." Aboard the U.S. Defiant, the battle had reached a stalemate. One Coraxian ship drifted powerless. Another had retreated. The third kept its distance, occasionally firing but mostly scanning. In the ship's laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to understand the images from the crystal. Captain Bennett joined him, her uniform showing burns from an exploded console on the bridge. "What have you found?" she asked. Rodriguez pointed to a holographic display showing the artifact's projections. The precursors created a weapon of immense power, but feared its misuse. They split it into components and scattered them across the galaxy. He manipulated the display to show 3 distinct parts. "The Coraxians have 2. We have the key. Without all 3, the weapon can't function properly. But even with just their 2 components, they could cause devastating damage." "Where would they take the components?" Bennett asked. Rodriguez pointed to the star map. "The Omega Nebula, as we suspected. There's a precursor installation there, a control center. That's where they'll try to assemble the weapon." Bennett's communicator chimed. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Foster." On the bridge, Foster's image appeared on the main screen. "Captain Bennett, we've identified the Coraxian command structure. Ambassador Zixval of the Illuvian Concordat is their principal agent. Carter is moving to expose him, but we believe the Coraxians will accelerate their timetable once their cover is blown." "We need reinforcements," Bennett said. "The Defiant can't face their fleet alone." "We're sending every ship we can spare," Foster assured her. "The Arcturians and Vex are joining us. Hold your position until the fleet arrives, then proceed to the Omega Nebula coordinates." On Nexus Station, the full council had assembled. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives discussed the mounting evidence of Coraxian attacks. Carter and Krenthal entered together. Carter carried a small device Susan Miller had sent, a scanner that could detect the Coraxian communication implants. Zixval called the session to order, his blue skin showing no sign of concern. "We face grave accusations from the humans and their allies. Before voting on a military response, we should consider all diplomatic options." Carter watched as several council members nodded in perfect unison. Miller's scanner quietly identified 6 representatives with active implants. When Carter's turn to speak came, he approached the central platform calmly. "Honored representatives, before we continue, I must bring a security matter to your attention." He activated the scanner. A high-pitched signal filled the chamber. Zixval and the 6 compromised members suddenly clutched their heads in pain. "What is the meaning of this?" Zixval demanded, his voice distorting unnaturally. This frequency disrupts Coraxian control implants, Carter explained to the shocked council. Ambassador Zixval is not who he claims to be. Zixval's blue skin rippled, then began to shift color. His features blurred as the disguise faltered. Security drones moved in, but Zixval tapped a device on his wrist. A blinding flash filled the chamber. When the light faded, Zixval was gone. Alarms blared throughout Nexus Station. "He's escaping," Krenthal growled. The remaining council members stared in horror at their 6 colleagues, who sat frozen, eyes vacant as their controlling implants failed. "The council recognizes the Coraxian threat," announced the senior Solarian representative, his voice shaking. "We vote unanimously for immediate military action." It was the fastest decision the Galactic Council had made in 500 years. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of the Omega Nebula. Nearly 60 ships representing 7 species hung in the darkness of space. At the center of the formation, the U.S. Defiant had been repaired as much as possible. Battle scars still showed on its hull. On the Defiant's bridge, Captain Bennett studied the tactical display. The nebula's gases and radiation made long-range scans difficult. "Any sign of Coraxian defenses?" she asked. Her tactical officer shook his head. "Nothing definitive. The nebula is interfering with our sensors." Bennett turned to Ambassador Carter, who had joined the fleet after the council vote. "This is likely a trap." Carter nodded. "Almost certainly. But we can't wait. Every hour gives them more time to activate the weapon." Dr. Rodriguez entered the bridge, carrying the crystal artifact in a protective case. "I've finished my analysis. The weapon doesn't just destroy targets. It erases them from existence, removes them from the fabric of space-time itself." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. If the Coraxians activated, even partially, Rodriguez didn't need to finish the thought. Bennett straightened in her command chair. "Signal the fleet. We begin our approach in 15 minutes." On Earth, Susan Miller worked with a team of analysts, monitoring Coraxian communications. Frank Douglas coordinated with military command nearby. "Their transmissions have changed," Miller announced. "They're using a new encryption pattern." She typed rapidly, her programs adapting to the new Coraxian codes. Suddenly, her screen filled with data. "They know we're coming," she said, looking up at Douglas. "They've called for reinforcements from outside Council space." Douglas immediately sent the warning to the fleet, but the nebula's interference slowed the transmission. The Allied fleet moved deeper into the nebula. Swirling gases in red and purple surrounded the ships. Sensors grew less reliable with each passing minute. "Contact," called the tactical officer. Multiple vessels ahead, emerging from the gas clouds. The view screen showed Coraxian ships appearing one after another. Far more than intelligence had predicted. "There must be 30 of them," Bennett said quietly. Ambassador Krenthal's voice came through the communication system. "My vessels are detecting a massive structure at the nebula center. It appears to be the precursor installation." Carter studied the tactical display. "They're positioned to block our approach." "All ships, battle formation," Bennett ordered. "Focus fire on their center. We need to punch through their line." The space around them lit up as the first volleys were fired. The Defiant shuddered as enemy weapons found their mark. "Return fire," Bennett commanded. "Full thrust forward. We need to reach that installation." On the Coraxian command ship, the being who had posed as Zixval stood on the bridge. His true form was taller, his skin gray rather than blue. Grand Overseer Malik watched the battle unfold with cold calculation. "The humans are more resourceful than we anticipated," he told his officers. "But they're too late." He gestured to a display showing the precursor installation. 2 components of the weapon had been placed in position. Energy readings spiked as technicians worked to activate it without the control key. "Even without the 3rd component, we can generate enough power for a limited demonstration," Malik said. "Target the Arcturian flagship." Inside the installation, Coraxian scientists made final adjustments. Warning lights flashed as the ancient machinery strained under improper use. Back on the Defiant, Rodriguez's artifact suddenly pulsed with blinding light. He dropped it in surprise, and it hovered in the air, projecting images faster than before. It's responding to the weapon activation. Rodriguez shouted over the noise of battle. The precursors built in safeguards. Bennett watched as the Allied fleet engaged the Coraxian ships. Several vessels on both sides were already damaged or destroyed. The path to the installation remained blocked by enemy forces. "We need a new approach," Carter said. "A small strike team might reach the installation while the fleet holds their attention." Bennett nodded grimly. "Prepare a shuttle. Best pilots and security team. Rodriguez goes with them. The artifact is the key." Carter stepped forward. "I'm going to." As they prepared for the desperate mission, Miller's message finally reached them. Coraxian reinforcements were on the way. They had less than an hour to reach the installation and stop the weapon. The shuttle weaved through weapons fire, engines straining as the pilot executed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Inside, Carter, Rodriguez, and 6 security officers held tight to their restraints. The crystal artifact floated in a containment field, pulsing with increasing intensity. 2 minutes to the installation, the pilot called out. On the main view screen, they could see the precursor structure, a massive ring-shaped facility partially embedded in an asteroid. Ancient technology, dormant for millions of years, now glowed with ominous energy. "The Defiant is drawing their fire," the co-pilot reported. "We have a clear approach vector." Rodriguez studied the artifact's projections. "The control key needs to be inserted at the central chamber. It will override any improper use of the weapon components." The shuttle shuddered as a Coraxian fighter spotted them. Energy beams lanced past, too close for comfort. "Return fire," Carter ordered. The shuttle's weapons struck the fighter, sending it spinning away. Ahead, a docking port on the installation grew larger. "Brace for landing," the pilot warned. The shuttle hit the docking port harder than intended. Metal screamed against metal as emergency systems engaged. When they stopped, everyone checked their weapons. "Stay alert," Carter told the team. "This is likely the most heavily defended section of the facility." They moved through ancient corridors, lights activating automatically as they advanced. The artifact's glow intensified, illuminating their path. Twice they encountered Coraxian guards. Brief, intense firefights left 2 human security officers wounded but able to continue. In the space battle outside, Captain Bennett watched the shuttle's progress on her tactical display. The Defiant shuddered as another hit struck its weakening shields. "Arcturian flagship is heavily damaged," her communications officer reported. "The Vex vessels are moving to protect it." Bennett made a quick decision. "All power to forward shields and engines. We're going to ram through their defensive line and give the shuttle team more time." "Captain," her first officer warned, "the structural integrity field may not hold." "It doesn't need to hold forever," Bennett replied. "Just long enough." The Defiant surged forward, taking hits but pushing directly toward the heaviest concentration of Coraxian ships. Several enemy vessels broke formation to avoid collision. Inside the installation, Carter's team reached a massive door. Ancient symbols matched those projected by the artifact. "This is it," Rodriguez said. "The central chamber." Security officers placed breaching charges. The explosion echoed through the facility. As the smoke cleared, they rushed inside. Grand Overseer Malik stood at a control console, surrounded by Coraxian scientists. The 2 weapon components were positioned in a circular device, energy arcing between them. "You're too late," Malik said, turning to face them. "The weapon is already powering up. Without the control key, it's unstable, but still effective enough to destroy your fleet." Carter raised his weapon. "It's over, Malik. Your infiltration has been exposed. The Council is united against you." Malik smiled coldly. "The Council is irrelevant. This weapon will make us the dominant power in the galaxy." Rodriguez stepped forward with the artifact. "This isn't a weapon of conquest. The precursors created it as a last resort. then regretted it so deeply they split it apart. The artifact pulsed brighter, rising from Rodriguez's hands. Correxian guards fired at it, but energy shields deflected their shots. "Stop them," Malik ordered, but it was too late. The crystal key flew across the chamber, inserting itself into the central mechanism. Blinding light flooded the room. The entire installation trembled. "What have you done?" Malik demanded. "The key doesn't just control the weapon," Rodriguez explained as ancient systems came to life around them. "It can reverse it." The energy building in the weapon components began flowing backward. A targeted pulse shot out, but instead of striking the Allied fleet, it hit the Correxian command ships. They didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been there at all. Malik lunged for the controls, but Carter tackled him to the ground. After a brief struggle, the Correxian leader was subdued. Outside, the remaining Correxian vessels, seeing their command ships vanish and their leader captured, began to retreat or surrender. 3 days later, Carter stood again before the Galactic Council. This time, representatives of all species listened with respect. "Humanity came to you warning of war," Carter said. "Today, we come offering peace, but a peace built on vigilance, not complacency." The council chambers, once filled with dismissal and doubt, erupted in applause.